Hi, my name is Paul DeMarco. I'd like to tell you about a book I've written, Faith Meets Forensics. In this book I try and prove scientifically that Jesus was the Son of God. I come from a science background, so I've tried to use scientific principles and apply those to the evidence we have about Jesus. Now, there are 6 sets of evidence that when you put them together prove categorically that he was in fact divine. I'll just discuss a few of these briefly now. Well, one of them are the messianic prophecies. If we go back 1,000 years before Christ lived, King David prophesied that the Christ would be crucified and that the soldiers would cast lots for his clothing. And this is quite remarkable because crucifixion was not common at all 1,000 years before Christ lived. And then if we go 300 years hence, we find the prophet Isaiah, who prophesied that the Christ would be born of a virgin. And a contemporary of Isaiah was the prophet Micah, and he prophesied that the Christ would be born in Bethlehem, which is quite remarkable because Bethlehem was an insignificant little village. And then if we go to 520 BCE, we have the prophecy of Zechariah. Now, Zechariah prophesied that the Christ would be sold for 30 pieces of silver, and that the silver coins would be thrown into the house of the Lord, in other words the temple of Jerusalem, and that they would be thrown to the potter. And this is quite incredible because after the betrayal by Judas, when he showed remorse, he went to the chief priests in the temple and tried to give the money back, and they refused to take it, and he threw the coins down. And those coins were used to buy the potter's field, which was a burial place for strangers visiting Jerusalem. The second piece of evidence are the miracles that were worked by Jesus, which are completely unprecedented in human history. If we go to the very first one that we have recorded, the wedding at Cana, where he converted between 450 and 690 litres of water into wine. We have the feeding of the 5,000 and later the feeding of the 4,000. These are incredible events. At the feeding of the 5,000, for instance, that tally is only men. So if you include women and children, we're looking at 15 to 20,000 people that must have been fed from a few fish and a small amount of bread. And then we have the raising of at least 3 people to life, including Lazarus, who'd been dead in the tomb for 4 days. This miracle, the raising of Lazarus, was the final straw for the chief priests and the 69-strong Great Sanhedrin, and they decided after that he had to die. They said that if they continued to allow him to work these miracles, then everyone would believe in him. That was how startling they were. And then if we come to the events of the crucifixion, there are 3 remarkable things that happened that coincided with the crucifixion of Christ. The first was a period of darkness for 3 hours at midday, from roughly 12 o'clock midday until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, this darkness was so great that the stars were plainly visible in the sky. And this event was described by the Greek historian Phlegon in his work, A History of the Olympiads, but also by other historians from antiquity. Now, some scientists have tried to say that this was caused by a total solar eclipse. A total solar eclipse only happens every 410 years at a specific point on Earth, but they can never last more than 7 minutes and 31 seconds, which is the maximum amount of time that it can take for the moon to pass over the sphere of the sun. And secondly, it could not possibly have been a total solar eclipse, because a total solar eclipse can only happen at the time of a new moon. And Christ died at the time of the Passover, and the Passover always happens at the time of a full moon. So it's impossible for it to have been a total solar eclipse. Others have tried to say, well, it must have been a lunar eclipse. But a lunar eclipse can never give you darkness that's so great that you can see the stars in the sky. The second major event that happened at the crucifixion was the earthquake, which was also described by Phlegon. Now, there is very strong evidence for an earthquake that hit Jerusalem in 31 CE and another one in 33 CE. And these are found in the brecciated, interclast breccias, which are a layer of sediment between the normal aragonite and clay deposits in the Dead Sea. And the third thing that happened, which was truly remarkable, was the curtain, the great curtain in the Temple of Jerusalem, which was 60 feet high, 4 inches thick. It was so heavy that horses tethered to both sides of it could not pull the curtain apart. And yet, at the very time of Christ's death, that was cut in two. Anyway, those are just snippets from the book, but enjoy the read. Thank you.